Okay, welcome back. We continue on with the little Tudors, and now we have, after Edward dies, Mary Tudor. So Mary Tudor, she is the half sister of Edward. Remember, the son of the daughter of Henry VIII. And so when Henry VIII died, you had Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth. And so we talked about in the previous lecture how Edward was the king because he was the male, so he inherited, even though Mary was older than him. And so Mary Tudor, she comes into power, and things go south pretty quickly. Like her brother, she's actually not going to be on the throne very long, only about 5 years, and she's also not always very healthy and has a lot of issues. So let me just go to my slide of the key words that you need to know about Mary Tudor, and we'll just spend a few minutes on her as well, and then we'll go to definitely, I think, the most significant of the little Tudors in our next lecture, which is going to be Elizabeth, and we'll spend a little bit more time on Elizabeth. So here we go. So what happens with Mary? So Mary comes in, and right away there are people who don't want her in power. And one of the core issues, of course, is Mary is Catholic, right? And by now, England is probably moving more towards a dominant Protestant nation. So there are a lot of Protestants who are not happy with Mary being the queen. There was a man named John Dudley, the Duke of Northumberland. You can see there's the first word, and he's going to try to plot to overthrow her. They managed to put a lady in power called Lady Jane Grey. She's known as, quote unquote, the 9-day queen because she's in power for a grand old total of 9 days. So she's not going to be there very long, and therefore it didn't really succeed. At the end of the day, Mary is the legitimate heir to the throne. And I believe Lady Jane Grey, I believe, was a cousin or related somehow to Mary. And so there was some blood relation, but it didn't matter. Obviously, the key person who should be the monarch is, by right of inheritance, was Mary. And so at that point, things are already not going well. Remember in the previous lecture, I mentioned the mid-Tudor crisis period, and this kind of continues with Mary. Another serious issue that made people in England worry was who Mary's going to marry, and it's going to be Philip II, the King of Spain. And of course, Spain is Catholic, and therefore, once word starts to leak that Mary's going to marry Philip, a Catholic, and Spain, and, of course, the natural concern, will Spain take over England, and all these kind of worries started to bubble up. And therefore, there was another rebellion called the Whites Rebellion. And this was another attempt to get rid of Mary from power. That one failed as well. One account I remember reading many years ago is there were some spies Mary had, and she knew about the rebellion, and she was able to suppress the rebellion before it before it got any momentum, I should say. And so, this is why we call it kind of this mid-Tudor crisis period. You've got attempts to overthrow the monarch. You've got a relatively unhealthy monarch. There are also some accounts that Mary wasn't always very happy with her life. She couldn't ever have a child. She's never going to have a child. And that's going to maybe make her upset too. Some accounts that her marriage with Philip weren't great. So there's these other things that just emotionally wasn't good. There's also bad harvests that took place during her reign a bit, and so there's economic struggles. So you've got a whole series of things that aren't going well, right? You've got, first Henry VIII dies, then you have a child, Edward VI, who's the king. Then you have, Mary Tudor comes in, and she's Catholic in a Protestant nation. You have attempts to overthrow her. And then there's her nickname, Bloody Mary. And of course, with her nickname, one of the things to keep in mind with her nickname is how does she get this? And, accounts are it's because she killed Protestants, including Thomas Cranmer, who we mentioned in the previous lecture. This is the thing, but that is interesting. When I talk to students about this in class, and I say, okay, her nickname's Bloody Mary. How many people do you think she killed? And immediately my students will say hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, and so forth. And it wasn't that many. It was about a few hundred. Now, obviously, it's still bad when you start killing people because of their religion. But the thing is, when we talk about Elizabeth, Elizabeth's going to be a Protestant. She's going to have conflicts with some Catholics. she never gets this nickname, Bloody Elizabeth. And I think one of the things to think about when you think of history in sources and so forth is Mary is a Catholic in what will become is a dominant Protestant nation. Elizabeth will be Protestant in a Protestant nation. So she's going to have a little bit of PR. Also, unlike Mary, Elizabeth will have some successes, more successes, as we're going to see in the next lecture. And so Elizabeth's reign is not great. One last thing about Thomas Cramer, interesting story about him. When he will be persecuted and executed, he's first going to be forced to recant. And there's a little story that when he recants, the story is he's going to be burnt at the stake. He has to write out a recantation, and he's going to be burnt. And the story is that as he's going to be burnt, he takes his hand that I believe was his right hand that he wrote the recantation with and kind of thrusted it into the fire, saying like this unworthy hand or something, or something of that nature, basically recanting his recantation in the last minute. So there's that element of it as well. So at the end of the day, Mary Tudor dies again. She dies 1558. She doesn't have an heir. Things are a bit problematic, and the question is, will England get out of this mid-Tudor crisis period? And what happens when Mary dies, since she doesn't have a child as well, it's going to go to the last of the Tudors. And the last of the Tudors, and kind of the final lecture for my History 110 class, is what we're going to cover right now in the next lecture. All right, guys, thank you.